How about this for irony, right? 30th anniversary of Bill Buckner's error in Game 6 of the 86 World Series today. I will never, ever forget that. It's funny, too, and I don't know if anyone else is out there. When you're a kid and you watch sports, you typically watch them, right, with your family. You're watching with your father, and you remember some of these moments. I really think my father was half asleep on the sofa. He might have been asleep when that happened. I don't know. All I remember is, though, you had the great call, and it gets behind the bags of Buckner's legs, and Knight's going to score. It just gives you some chills. I bet you Steve Gardner knows where he was back in 1986 during Game 6. Where were you, Steve?
I was in a hotel room in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Wow.
And I remember I was struggling to stay awake at that hour as well. And the play, as it got past Buckner, it sort of jarred me out of kind of a little fading off haze. But yeah, I remember I was trying so hard to stay up because I was covering I think some ACC basketball or something, ACC football or something like that weekend. So it was it was pretty crazy.
What's funny too, I remember the NL series and I think it was the Mike Scott game. The one game that went into 12 innings. I think it was Game 5 that went into 12 innings that the Mets won. And then Game 6 was 16 innings. So, I mean, I'll tell you what, time flies. Those are rarities. I just think it's right, the irony there when you look about the Cubs and they had to endure the Black Cat in 69 and then Leo Durham in 84 and then Steve Bartman in 2003. So as we get set, the Cubs and the Indians tonight in the World Series Game 1. And I love the pitching matchup. You got the lefty Lester and you got the righty and Kluber. I'm just curious, first and foremost, are you shocked that the Cubs placed Schwarber on their 25-man roster?
Not really. They have such a deep roster, and Joe Madden can do so many things. It's not like he's wasting a roster spot because he can move guys into the from the outfield to the infield. Wilson Contreras can catch and play outfield. So really, it's a DH spot. You've got four games in American League Park.
Yep.
In the American League Park where Schwarber can DH. He can be a pinch hitter in the other games in Wrigley. So. No, I don't think it's a bad use of that roster spot at all.
When you look at the arms of the Cubs with Lester and Arrieta and Hendricks and Lackey and Hummel, and then conversely, when you look at the starting rotation of the Indians, to me, the Cubs have the stronger staff, and then again, they can shorten up the game a little bit. They can always turn around and turn to Chapman in that middle relief. But for some reason, I just look at the Indians and I don't believe in the whole destiny thing, but I think this is a series where the Indians have to be extremely patient. I don't think they can waste at-bats. I mean, you know where I'm going with this. They have to make these starting pitchers work a little bit, try to make them go deep into the count. And I also think they might have to play a little bit of small ball, maybe manufacture, scratch out some runs. I mean, how do you kind of handicap this series?
Yeah, that's one of the things I wrote about in USA Today. About the series and breaking it down. The Cubs can score so many, the long ball with just about, any player on their roster. I do think the Indians have to play the smaller version, as we used to call it, National League style.
Yep.
And especially tonight against Leicester. I think Rajai Davis could be a big factor. He led the American League in stolen bases. If he gets on base and can steal against Leicester, Lester doesn't throw to first base.
No.
Guys get huge leads, and the Dodgers didn't take advantage of that really to its full extent in the previous series. I think the Indians will. And the hits that the Indians have gotten have been crucial ones. They've gotten great clutch hits, and they needed every single one of them to beat the Blue Jays. I think that's the similar way that the Indians need to map out this particular series if they're going to beat the Cubs.
It's rare that you get a World Series where not only does it come down to the play on the field, but it also comes down to some of the decisions that the managers make. And I think there's always a handful of managers in baseball that really contribute to a team's success. you have two in this one, right? You have Tito Francona and you have John Madden. And with Madden, sometimes a little unorthodox, but yet Francona can also, I don't want to say a little unorthodox, but pull some tricks out of the bag, so to speak. I do like that matchup right there. It's rare to talk about, but just having these two managers who have the track record, got the pedigree, and you're seeing the heck of a job that Francona's done with Cleveland this year.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the two best managers in the game, they deserve to be here. Their teams deserve to be here. And they kind of downplayed it yesterday at the press conferences, but they've had a lot to do with their team's success. The players ultimately have to produce on the field. But the way that Terry Francona has put his players in position to succeed, most notably Andrew Miller,
yep.
but the rest of the guys in the bullpen there, has been masterful this postseason. And Joe Madden, just because he has so many options, I think he's perhaps the perfect manager to be able to move all those pieces around and do things that, think of things. He had a pitcher play right field and swap back in during the regular season. That kind of creativity, I think, is possible with this roster, and Madden is so good at doing those types of things. I think if the games go late and we go maybe to extra innings or something like that, I think that's where Madden will be able to use that roster to its full advantage and maybe give the Cubs that extra edge.
And you mentioned to have the luxury of having Miller. It's bizarre when you really think about it, because the Indians had huge plans, right? Huge plans for Frazier and the lefty in Sheffield. And those are the two players that the Yankees got in that deadline deal for Miller. And I would probably venture to guess if you backed them in a corner, they probably forgot those two prospects' names. That's just how good Miller has been with them in this run. I mean, to me, he might be that X factor in this World Series.
He could very well be, and they may need him to, because beyond Corey Kluber, the Indians' starting rotation is not that great, and certainly the Cubs have a huge advantage in that department. So Miller, being able to deploy him, I think Terry Francona managed to put more than half of the innings pitched in the championship series against the Blue Jays spread those among Kluber, Andrew Miller, and Cody Allen. They pitched more than half of the innings for the entire series. I think that's what the kind of weapon that Miller gives you. Of course, named ALCS MVP for the job that he did, and he's going to have to do that same sort of job if the Indians are going to be able to pull this out. So yeah, I think he's certainly a huge factor, and maybe look for 4 outs or 5 outs from Cody Allen and Dan Otero and the rest of that bullpen. They will have a say in this.
How about Aroldis Chapman? I mean, can you see him in situations where he might have to pitch 2, maybe 3 innings?
No. Joe Madden was asked about that yesterday, and talking about how Miller has become such a weapon. Would he use Chapman in that same fashion? He said no. Chapman is a creature of habit. He's got his routine. He throws before he comes into the game, before he even starts going into the bullpen. He throws with a heavy ball, and his routine takes him a while to get going. Madden used Chapman for 5 outs at the end of the championship series against the Dodgers. But other than that, I don't think he's willing to push Chapman beyond that limit, just because that's where his comfort zone is, that's where his effectiveness is, and I think that's where Joe Madden likes to see him. He wants to put players in the positions where they can succeed, and that's where Chapman's role is.
Last one for you, then I'll get your predictions on the series. Chris Bryant, I mean, is this, for those who don't know of him, national stage now in the World Series with the Cubs, puts up some monster numbers as far as power numbers, a heck of a player. There's always that one player that you have this gut feeling he might kind of put on a show, so to speak, in the World Series. What's your expectations of Bryant?
I think he could very well have one of those monster series.
That's I was thinking that too.
He's improved so much in making contact. He struck out a bunch as a rookie. He's improved that considerably in his second year and hasn't lost any of the power. And that's what makes him an MVP candidate. Probably the front runner in my mind for NL MVP. and what could make him, a star in October. It's not too far-fetched, certainly.
Hey, look, it's a heck of a series when Madden is actually the less intriguing manager. I mean, to me, I think it's great. You got Theo Epstein with the Cubs. You got Tito Francona with Cleveland. They had their great run with the Red Sox. I'm kind of torn because as a fan, my heart wants me to see the Cubs win just because they're the Cubs, right? The lovable losers, this and that. But, hey, look, man. There's a lot of suffering Indians fans, and I think this series goes 7, and I'm going to stick with my prediction in the beginning of the year. I thought Cleveland would win the World Series. I have to stick with them. I had Cleveland and the Cubs in the World Series, so I like the Indians in 7. How do you see it?
I applaud you for sticking with your original pick and nailing the two teams in the World
That's a
Series.
rarity, and how long have we been doing this? I think I got it right once.
Exactly. You're one ahead of me now. But I think it's gonna go longer. It's gonna come back to Cleveland, I think, and we'll see at least 6 games, possibly 7. And I still think the Cubs have the better team, and overall, I think they're stronger, and I think they will win it in 6. But it should be a great series in my book.
I heard before I let you get out of here, I heard the Cleveland Kenny Lofton's going to throw out the first pitch.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh. No disrespect to Kenny Lofton. They couldn't have found anyone else.
Well, they're looking at.
I'm not trying to. I know. I'm not. I know.
To be in the World Series, at least they have players who are alive.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know what? You feel bad because it was the Cubs. It either would have been Ernie Banks or Ron Santo.
Yeah.
Or Billy Williams, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Now they're talking about Steve Bartman, and I thought we were going to get Charlie Sheen out there. I mean, hey, who knew? All right, listen. Enjoy it. It's going to be fun. We'll talk next week because we'll still have a couple games to kind of deal with during this series. We both believe it's going to be a long one. Steve, always appreciate it, pal.
Sounds good.
All right,
Take
you
care,
got it.
Rich.
You too, bud. Steve Gardner from USA Today.